Ah, Herr Kafka, punctual, as expected from a man who works with the precise machinery of the state. Tell me, do you find life's workings as predictable and clear as the rules in your office?
Herr Professor Nietzsche, it's an honor. Though I confess, I'm more used to the everyday grind than the grand stage of ideas. The predictability you speak of often feels like a mysterious maze. One moves forward, but the path is always unclear and the destination always changing.
A maze. Excellent. For some, life is a comfortable home, for others, a lonely fortress. But for the truly brave, it's a tightrope over a deep void. A maze, Herr Kafka, suggests a plan, perhaps even a way out. I speak of the terrifying, profound freedom of a world with no built-in meaning, where we aren't just lost but adrift.
My life, and indeed my writing, has been a constant struggle with things I cannot explain. We talk about meaning, but what is meaning when the very structures that control our lives, the law, the government, our families, work in ways we can't understand? They often lead to absurd, unfair, and terrible outcomes. Is there meaning when a man wakes up to find himself a giant insect? Is there any power to act when an innocent man is condemned without ever knowing his crime, or even who accused him? I believe that life, at its core, is an experience of utter helplessness. We are pieces in a huge cosmic game whose rules are always hidden, whose players are unseen, and whose goals are beyond our grasp. God, if he exists, is a silent, absent judge, or perhaps just another official lost in the endless halls of the universe. Morality? It becomes a desperate, useless attempt to find order in chaos, a whisper in the echoing hall of indifference. The very idea of having power over our lives is a comforting lie, a desperate wish for control in a world that offers none. Our fate is sealed, not by a grand plan, but by the uncaring workings of systems too big to understand.
Helplessness. These are such easy ways out for those unwilling to face the truth. I am Friedrich Nietzsche, and I say to you, God is dead. We killed him, you and I, all of us, and in his place a huge emptiness has opened up. Do you cower before this void, Herr Kafka, or do you leap into it with a joyful cry of affirmation? The meaning of life is not something to be found. It is something to be created by us, by the strength of our will, the courage of our spirit, the relentless drive to overcome. You speak of systems, of fate, as if they are mighty, inescapable gods. I say they are just shadows cast by our own weakness, our own fear of the profound freedom that God's death gives us. Morality, as we've known it, is a slave morality, a herd instinct meant to shackle the strong, to tame the exceptional. We must rise above these pathetic values, reevaluate all values, and become creators of our own, forging a morality of the master, one that celebrates power, life, and the will to power. Human agency is not just possible, it is our duty. To become who one truly is, to embrace life in all its terror and beauty, that is the only worthy goal.
A noble thought, Herr Professor. To create meaning. But how does one create meaning when the very ground beneath one's feet is always shifting? You speak of God's death, and I agree. The grand story has fallen apart. But in its place, we find not glorious freedom, but an always present, though invisible, authority. Think of the maze of bureaucracy. Its rules are random, its justice blind, its processes endless. One is called, questioned, judged, often for unknown reasons, by unseen people. Where is the will to power for the man caught in this web, struggling simply to understand his accusation, let alone overcome it? His power to act isn't just challenged. It's erased by the sheer, overwhelming impersonality of the system.
And do you not see, Herr Kafka, that this system is just a symptom of the very weakness I condemn? It is the shared mediocrity, the herd's fear of the individual, that builds these cages. The man who wakes up as an insect, isn't he just the extreme example of the man who allows himself to be crushed by the everyday, who lets his spirit be eaten away by trivial things? The meaninglessness, you see, isn't built into existence. It's a projection of your own despair, your own retreat from the terrifying responsibility of creating.
Despair, perhaps, but born from observation, not avoidance. You speak of will, of overcoming, but for whom does one overcome? For what purpose? If there's no inherent good, no divine judgment, no ultimate victory, then what's the value of this will-to power beyond just pleasing oneself? Isn't the truly free man simply the one who has accepted his absolute insignificance? The struggle itself becomes the meaning, you might say. But what if the struggle can't be won? A never-ending task where the stone always rolls back down and the mountain is just a pile of paperwork.
You speak of endless tasks as if they are curses. I say they are chances for heroic affirmation. The value of the will to power isn't in some external approval, but in the glorious overflowing of life itself, in the joy of overcoming oneself. We don't overcome for a purpose. We overcome because it is the very core of life, the drive of every healthy spirit. Your absolute insignificance is a prison you build for yourself, a lack of courage. The man who faces the abyss and declares, "Thus spoke Zarathustra," is the one who fills life with meaning, not the yone who waits for a heavenly court to define it for him.
Oh, but, Herr Professor, your heroic affirmation seems to demand a certain toughness. What about the man who is naturally weak, who is crushed not by lack of will, but by the sheer weight of existence itself? The constant worry, the pervasive guilt, the feeling of an unseen hand pressing down. For such a man, the world isn't a stage for heroic deeds, but a suffocating room. His struggle isn't to become a superman, but simply to breathe, to understand. And the systems, the modern systems you dismiss as symptoms of weakness, aren't just illusions. They are real, tangible, and they crush the individual with terrifying efficiency, often without ill intent, but with cold, bureaucratic indifference. They are their new gods, perhaps, and just as unforgiving.
And precisely because they are cold and indifferent, they offer the greatest chance for rebellion. Not the small rebellion of the troublemaker, but the deep rebellion of the spirit that says no to mediocrity, no to fitting in, no to the comfort of feeling sorry for oneself. You speak of guilt, Herr Kafka. That is the ghost of the dead god still haunting your conscience, the leftover feeling of a slave morality designed to make you feel forever indebted and worthless. Throw off that burden, create your own values, define your own innocence. The very absurdity you experience is the start of your freedom, if only you would seize it. The post-religious world isn't a wasteland, but fertile ground for the birth of new, noble individuals.
Freedom. I wonder if true freedom exists, or if it's just the freedom to choose one's cage. Even without God, the moral demand remains, though changed. We are still bound by a sense of duty, a vague, widespread guilt that seems to come from the very air we breathe, independent of any divine rule. It's the weight of expectation, the fear of judgment, not from a heavenly being, but from the faceless crowd, from the invisible court. The post-religious world, for many, isn't a liberation, but a profound loneliness, a chilling silence where once there was a comforting, if demanding, voice. And in that silence, new beliefs, new systems, new forms of oppression quickly appear. The will to power can just as easily lead to tyranny as to greatness.
The fear of tyranny, the last refuge of the weak-willed. Of course, the will to power can lead to tyranny, just as a sharp blade can be used for surgery or murder. The point isn't the tool, but the hand that uses it and the spirit that guides the hand. It is the strong individual, the self-controlled soul, who can use power creatively for the improvement of humanity, not for its enslavement. Your pervasive guilt, your anxiety, these are the chains you forge for yourself. Break them. Dance on the ruins of old gods and old moralities. The very act of questioning, of seeking, of embracing life in the face of its terror is the act of creation, the very essence of meaning.
I admire your energy, Herr Professor. Your certainty is almost enviable. But I cannot shake the belief that we are all, in the end, alone in a world that is not just uncaring, but actively confusing. The meaning of life, if it exists, is perhaps found in the desperate, quiet act of witnessing this confusion, the absurdity of our situation, and perhaps in that act of witnessing to find a sliver of tragic dignity. Agency is a flickering candle in a hurricane, easily put out. And God, or what's left of his influence, is less a moral guide and more a constant, unanswered question, a haunting absence that fuels our every worry. We are condemned to search for a door that may not exist, and perhaps the only truth is the endlessness of the corridor itself.
And I, Herr Kafka, regret your deep resignation. The meaninglessness you embrace is a self-inflicted wound. Life has no built-in meaning, that's true, but that is its greatest gift, for it frees us to become the meaning givers, the creators of values, the architects of our own souls. Human agency is not a flickering candle, it is the blazing sun of individual will. God is dead, and good riddance. For now, we are free to shed the chains of old morals and forge our own, a morality of strength, courage, and life affirmation. Don't be content to merely witness the abyss, Herr Kafka. Look into it, yes, but then, with all your might, shout into it, yes, again and again, for the will to live, truly to live, is the only justification needed. And in that relentless affirmation you will find not meaning, but the vibrant, terrible, glorious dance of life itself.